Hello. I am making this video to share my experience with quitting my job without having another job lined up and to show that it is possible to do if you have a plan in place. So in my previous two videos, I shared my story and experience to answer the questions of when should you quit your job and also how do you make a plan so that you can survive financially after you quit your job so that you don't need to get another job after you quit your job so that you can have some time where you can quit your job without having another job lined up. So in this video, I'm going to talk about what I did after I quit my job so that I can share kind of my experience doing that. If you're also wondering what, I guess, what your life would look like after you quit your job without having another job lined up. So my plan to quit my job without having another job was so that I could both travel and also have some time to do some professional development, or in other words, work on myself. So I'm a web developer and web designer. So I wanted to take this time to brush up on my web development skills and also build my web design portfolio as well. However, in the beginning, it wasn't all business. So immediately after I quit, so I quit in November of 2025, it took about 2.5 months for me to decompress from just, I guess, the negativity and the negative energy I was feeling and to let go of the stress that I was feeling from my job. So what I did in those 2 months was just straight binge, video games, books, movies, entertainment, like sports on TV and things like that. So in the beginning, you'll probably need some time to decompress and just kind of not do anything that would be considered productive. And that's okay, especially if your job was very stressful or made you have a lot of like pent up stress or like other negative emotions like that. So also in the beginning, I remember that in the beginning stages of me quitting my job, I would still have this feeling of having the job over my head, but in more like a positive way, more like a refreshing way, as in like I would think to myself, during, like, I would look at the clock, and if it was sometime during what would have been my work hours, I would have said to myself, like, oh, imagine if you were still at work right now, and like how negative you would be feeling. And then through those kinds of reflections, it made me more validated in my decision to quit my job, and that like I felt so relieved that I wasn't at that job anymore, and that I kind of reclaimed my own freedom by kind of comparing what my life was like after I quit with what I remembered my life was before I quit. Now, instead of being in a job that I didn't like, I had time to do things that I felt like doing, and stuff that I felt like I didn't have time to do before. So as I mentioned, I would work a lot of overtime before and on weekends. So a lot of time that normally would be, free for recreation or leisure wasn't there for me in my previous job. So now after I quit, I have the time to do those things. Okay, so what does my schedule look like now after I got the binge of video games and like movies and TV out of my system? So after the initial 2.5 months of binging, I settled down in more of my productive schedule because I knew that, like, at the back of my head, even when I was binging as well, in the beginning, I felt like, I allowed myself to do that and I told myself, like, hey, you deserve this. So it didn't feel too guilty in the beginning, but at near like the end of that period, in the second month or 2.5 month of just watching TV or, scrolling on my phone all day and doing nothing and taking a nap, I started feeling more guilty because I knew that I planned this year off not to like have fun per se, but like like that wasn't the focus. Like it wasn't here for me to like get a summer vacation or for me to just focus on playing video games, even though like that would that's very tempting to do. I knew that I should make the most out of this time off, especially because I'm financing it myself, right? So like every speaking now that it's like what, like 6 7 months after I quit my job, and like every other week I'm paying off my credit card, but it's with my saved money and not income. That kind of reminds me and like motivates me to not waste this time because I'm paying for it. It's not like it's free, and then also it's not like it's gonna last forever either. So what I do now is I try to be a little bit more productive. So I follow a 3-day on and 1-day off schedule where I work. I try to be productive for 3 days, and then I'll take 1 day where I'm less productive, so I can like rest, right? So it's not like I'm working all the time. I'm still having like a cycle of like work and rest. Granted, there's days where like I'm supposed to be working that day that I just don't feel like working, so I do less work or less work than I plan to do that day, which is fine as well, right? But then conversely, there's also days where I feel like I do a lot. I remind myself that like, oh, you could have, just spent the day goofing off or playing video games and watching movies, but instead you did X, Y, and Z, right? So you feel good those days as well. So this is like a general kind of schedule here. So what does the schedule consist of? It goes from 6:30 a.m. to 10:30 p.m., which is when I go to bed. So at 6:30 a.m. I wake up, and then I'll head to the gym at 7 a.m. And then I'll come back and do my daily chores and eat breakfast at 8:30. And then I'll be done that at around 10 a.m., where I'll do some music practice. So either practice the piano, the guitar, or the drums. And then for an hour, and then at 11 a.m., I'll do my daily reading. So mostly I read nonfiction here. So as I mentioned, I'm working on my web development skills, brushing up on that. So right now I'm reading a JavaScript textbook, and then maybe I'll read some other textbook afterwards. And then at 12 is lunch. And afterwards at 1 p.m. I'll take a nap after lunch. So I remain like, more refreshed during the day compared to like a regular work day. And then after that at 2 p.m. is my first work period for 3 hours. And then if it's the off day, I'll have free time instead of working. And then at 5 o'clock, I'll relax. Until 6:30, which is dinner. So at 8 p.m., I'll do another work period for 2 hours. And right now in that work period, in the second work period, I'm learning Russian as a foreign language. So that's been very interesting and entertaining to learn a new language, because I definitely would not have time to learn a new language or do that extracurricular stuff before. And then at 10 p.m., I'll get ready for bed, and then I'll head to bed at 10:30 p.m. So this schedule gives me about 5 hours of work and like 1 hour of like studying / reading, which is a bit less than like, the typical 8-hour work week. But I'd rather have a nap, an hour nap, and then also like an hour and a half of relaxation time built into the work days. So it's more of a relaxing kind of sabbatical schedule rather than kind of recreating a 8-hour, 9-hour job schedule, which was what led to me burning out in the first place. Like working too much without having enough time to relax. So I wanted to have more of a balance on my schedule, but then still have have hours to be productive. So now I can do the things I felt like I never had the time to do. Like I mentioned, like music practice or like reading, art, riding my bike, other projects like doing these videos or photography. I don't know. Like I mentioned before, like playing, like binging on video games and movies, like those are fun, but like only in short bursts. Like I realized that now, especially because I don't have like that source of stress, which is pushing me to cope with relaxation activities like movies and video games. Like doing them just for the sake of them now, to have fun is okay in short bursts. But like as an adult, or like as a more of an adult person now, I feel like doing that for too long, like first makes you guilty for not being productive as an adult, but like I realized that like doing the stuff that I wanted to do, which could be considered like work, is actually feels more accomplished in a sense after you've done it. Even though it is harder, but it's more engaging than like playing video games or watching a movie in terms of like feeling growth or something like that. I'm not I don't know. Okay, so now it's time for my thoughts and reflections. So, how do I feel now that I've kind of executed my plan in terms of quitting and not having a job afterwards and living off my savings for now? It's been like 6.5 months, or 7.5 months now. So, I feel good, I guess. Mostly because even though I had to quit earlier than I expected, which was I wanted to quit. I planned to quit in April of this year, 2026. And I quit 4 months, 4.5 months before that in November of 2025. I had enough to meet my projected expenses. Mostly due to, like, as I mentioned in my previous video, the good luck and timing of the performance of the stock market, and that it gave me more breathing room to meet my goals, and also have more breathing room to meet like what I mentioned in the last video as well, like any expenses that weren't part of my planned expenses for each month. So that helps me feel less pressure right now in when I'm like on my sabbatical and I'm spending my own money and then having to manage those expenses. I have had to live more like modestly on that fixed budget. And as I mentioned, like even though I accounted for like $700 a month for spending, some months I would still go over. So um, if I if I did this again, I would probably put more money for my spending category each month. Even though, like as I mentioned in my last video, I'm really trying to like not spend like any money at all. Sometimes it's like somehow I do for some reason. But in my case, it was still manageable to pay off without dipping into my emergency savings. But that's the point of having that like extra stash of cash, not for like extra spending, but like for any unexpected expenses, like AKA emergencies, right? Like emergency vet appointment or emergency like medical or legal emergency that you need some extra money for. So it's not really for that like the discretionary purchases. So again, my advice for anyone that wants to attempt this, or anybody that recently quit their job without having another job lined up, is to really, 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 really cut down on discretionary items like dinners, going out with friends for drinks, shows, buying unnecessary things online like clothes or like gadgets, as you won't have the budget to do this when you're living on your savings. So do that now, right? Like if you haven't quit your job yet, in terms of like practicing not spending a lot of money. Because I remember when I had a job, I didn't do that. I would be like, oh, like I have this amount of money, I can spend $100, $200. I'll just pay it off in my next paycheck. But now I don't have that next paycheck to pay it off, but like I still have like the remnants of those habits, right? Like I'm like, oh, let me buy this memory card or this gadget online. But now down the line, I've been like 7 months down the line, I've been better doing that. Like especially now because I'm like saying this out loud to myself. I realize how important that is to be like really fiscally responsible for, especially for discretionary purchases. In terms of my mental health, I definitely feel like my mental health has improved like drastically compared to when I was working overtime and dealing with like bad and rude managers talking to me in ways I didn't like, and dealing with clients that would get mad because our team failed to meet the requirements or got the requirements wrong, and then feeling frustrated and having to do the work again. So now, like, definitely it's night and day. Like, one major difference is that I noticed that when I go to sleep, I'm either just excited about what I want to do tomorrow or what I have planned to do tomorrow, even if what I have to plan to do tomorrow is like a lot of like work, like filming a video and then having to like, read a chapter of the textbook, and then having to, study Russian. like those things would make me excited compared to before, where I would feel like this morbid sense of dread, where like I knew the next day was going to be like nearly impossible. Like it feels like, because I'll be working at a job that I dislike, and then like having to like go through the motions and like dredge myself through the mud for 8+ hours a day staring at a screen. Yeah, the feeling is just night and day. As well, now that, as I mentioned, I have time to like do what I want to do, which makes me happier compared to like being forced to do a job you hate, which is quite obvious. And yeah, so like generally I'm more happier now, and I think that is additional validation that I made the great and correct choice in quitting a job that was, you know, causing me a lot of stress, making my eyes worse, making my bodies worse, my body worse, making me, you know, drink a lot. Yeah. So I traded that in for a year of, you know, financial progress, right? Compared to like me working a year of like a job and saving that money to like, for example, to buy my own house, or to save for like a wedding, or to save for like retirement there. So I traded 1 year of making progress towards like those goals, and traded it in for a year of like introspection, professional development, self-development, reset, and rest, that I felt like I couldn't ignore it anymore. Because before this job that I quit, I worked for 3.5 years. I also worked previous jobs sequentially before that, right? So in total, like after I graduated from postgraduate studies, I like worked for like 5-6 years without like much of a long break. So I felt like I needed to do that. It was time to like take a break. So I traded in a year of making money and like financial progress for a year of like reset and rest. So the timing was right for me to do this, and I'm glad that I did. So in conclusion, if you're debating with yourself whether to quit your job, my advice to you is this: you will know when you have to quit. Until then, try to hang on as long as possible while making and saving for your plan, right? So while you're hanging on, you need to be strategizing your plan, you know, designing what you want to do, envisioning your life beyond your current job, and making the moves to enact that reality, or like to like, you know, manifest that reality, you know? So while you're doing so, train up good financial spending habits so that you are prepared to live on like this reduced and fixed monthly income. And then while you're hanging on, keep your goals in mind and like visualize them, so that while you're saving and then enduring and surviving through the job that you dislike, you can keep yourself motivated, and then also remind yourself that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. That idea, or that kind of thought pattern, really helped me to push through like days that I almost wanted to quit, and days that I felt like it was impossible. Like I just reminded myself like, hey, like you're training like this for like something like that's much more worthwhile. Like for me, it was like that trip, and like the trip that I'm going to go on, and also this time now during my sabbatical. So like keep that goal in mind. Whatever your goal is, it may be a vacation like me, might be like something else, right? So I know that I was keeping my vacation in mind throughout the 3 years I spent saving for this plan, and that helped me push through that weekend overtime, and like managers that are rude to me. So I wish you good luck, and I hope to see you on the other side. Thanks so much for sticking around if you watched all of my videos, and I really hope that I shared something useful, and that you could take away something from my story and then apply it to your own plan. When you get there, I hope that you enjoy it, and that you can, feel proud that you designed and executed the plan that enabled you to get your own freedom. All right. Thanks so much. Hope you guys have a great day. Take care.